On today's show, we talk about iBook author MacWorld.
Apple's earnings call, jailbreaking, and...
Find out which common household cleaner will kill you if left unattended.
And what is that itching sensation in your groin area? All that and more coming up on this episode of the Infinite Loop Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of the Infinite Loop Show. I am Michael Gaines.
And I am Kacey Coughlin.
Hey, Kacey Coughlin. How are you?
Good, Michael Gaines. How are you?
Oh, I'm just peachy.
I know.
So to people listening to this for the very first time, we are two big, huge Mac fans, aren't we?
We're, uber nerds.
Are we uber nerds? Is that how
We're
it works?
like level 50 Mac fans, I think.
Level 50? If you're playing Old Republic, it's level 50.
You're right. Yeah, I guess it would depend on your world.
If you're playing WoW, we're level 85.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been talking a little bit about doing a Mac show. It's something that was on both our minds, so I said, well, why the hell don't we just do a Mac show? Actually, I shouldn't even call it a Mac show, should I?
Yeah, because like all things Apple now, it's not just sequestered to the desktop, laptop platform. It's iOS, it's all things Apple, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's why we called the show the Infinite Loop Show, because we wanted to make sure that we covered all our bases. If we called it like some goof, like that Mac show or something.
Right. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself.
No, you don't. So, Kacey, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and why you're such a Mac head?
Well, I converted, like most people, from Windows to Mac, primarily because I'm an artist, first and foremost.
Right.
I draw, paint, you name it. I mean, anything creative, I do it. And that's kind of blown up from just painting even into now graphic design, web design, which kind of snowballed into programming, which snowballed into hardware design and building, and now I work as an IT professional, and I do some iOS programming in my spare time.
Okay. So how much programming have you done? Are you big on iOS, Mac? Does it matter?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess my favorite languages are probably more web-based. I know, HTML and CSS like the back of my hand. PHP and all of those, JavaScript. I know some Cocoa, but not as much as I'd like, and I'm trying to kind of increase that. And that includes, iOS.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a different language, but it's nice. I like it.
For me, I was an Atari head. For anybody that remembers the old Atari Commodore Wars of the 80s. And I went from an Atari 2600 to an 800 to an XL and then to an Atari ST. So when Atari went under, the logical progression would be to go to a Macintosh. And so I bought my first Mac, I think in 89 or 90.
I don't know.
I'm just,
I wasn't there.
If anybody in the audience knows, no. But yeah, it was around 89 or 90, and it was money well spent. I love that thing. Bought a copy of Think C off somebody. I was going to NJIT at the time, and I bought a copy of Think C from somebody at Rutgers Newark across the street, and that's how I started doing Mac programming and got into all the Inside Macintosh books, which were expensive as hell. If anybody remembers those, the old Pascal-based ones.
Oh, my God.
I know. Moved on to MPW and all that over time, yada, yada, yada. And here I am today. Big Mac head.
Yay.
All right. So let's talk about a little what we're going to do with this show. We both decided that we're going to start off the show with the heavy stuff and then move down into the fun stuff, right? Because we don't want to bore people towards the end.
No. You want people coming back, so you got to leave them on a good note.
All right, so let's get to the news first. iBook Author was just released. You've been playing around with this thing. Why don't you tell everyone? Because I still run Snow Leopard for various device driver reasons. So why don't you tell everybody about it? Because you played with. I have Lion, but I just can't boot into it because I couldn't be able to do this because of the drivers for my mixer.
So yeah, I mean I had to download it immediately and play around with it a little bit. It's kind of like, and this is what I've been telling everybody, if Pages and iWeb had a baby. Like most Apple programs, their iLife and iWork programs, they're very similar in the interface and how they work and how they're laid out. If you know one, you know them all, really. Right. So the layout is very much like Pages. You have templates that you can choose from. The pages are laid out on the side, kind of like a PDF from the cover down to the content. And then you have, the main window in the middle for all your laying out. And it's by default in landscape view. But then the stuff you can drag in and kind of play around with and lay out is more like iWeb, where you have your text and your pictures and your video and your audio tracks you can just drag and drop in from the inspector. But then you also have widgets, which can range anywhere from a dashboard widget to like a 3D model to like a Google Maps type of interface. There's transition effects. You can drop in a Keynote file and have like a little mini Keynote going on in there. Lots of stuff you can do, and it's really quite a nice program that's really easy to use. It wouldn't really take very long to learn how to. I mean, you can have a book in like half an hour to an hour. The main thing I think people have been up in arms about is the EULA attached to this program.
That's been a big stinker about this. But do you think that people are... Well, first explain it, but I think people are making more of it than it is.
Yeah, so the EULA, before you even download and install it from the App Store, kind of says you agree to Apple's terms, la la la, you agree that anything you make with this, should you choose to put a price on it, has to go through the iBook store. If you choose to be like a free publisher and just make free content, then you can save it to your hard drive and go elsewhere, or put it through the Apple iBook store. There was some language in there that kind of made it sound like anything you make with this is now partially owned by Apple. But I think people were just kind of, because it's in such general terms, people were kind of jumping to conclusions and making a big deal out of it.
Yeah, the way that I interpreted this is that if you well, first off, let's just make one thing clear, is that they're giving the tool away for free. Right. Because they want to pull people in. So they give the thing away for free, and then they say if you put it on the iBook store and you sell it for free, don't charge for it, then you can put it anywhere else for no charge. And just like you said, if you charge for it, then it has to go through the iBook store. Now, that it makes sense to me because they give it away for free. If they charge for it, I think it would be a whole different story.
And realistically, it doesn't feel like a huge jump from the App Store. When you build an iOS app in Xcode and want to publish it on where else are you going to go with it?
Right.
You can put it down on your website and have people download it, but I don't know how else people are going to install it aside from going through the Apple App Store.
Right.
And similarly with iBooks, you put all this rich media functionality in it. Where else are you going to go with it? The Kindle's not going to run that.
Right.
So, right. I don't...
And so that's why I think that this was... here's another thing that they don't really say in the EULA because it's all legal speak, but they don't. They said that the content at the end, like the it's not so much the file format, but the file contents, as you said, the dashboard widgets and all that you can't sell. But they're not saying that you can't take the content, like the text and the images, and use it on another iBook store, not iBook store, another bookstore, another digital bookstore.
The finished product in their, what is it, .iBook format is, I think, what they're after. But the actual like content, your words and pictures and everything, that's still yours. And I think people, again, were kind of jumping to conclusions thinking like, oh, anything I import into iBook Author is, bam, partially owned by Apple.
Right.
And it's not the case. It's the end result. Once you publish it and export it to the iBook store, they're going to take a cut.
Yeah. And again, for a free tool, that makes a lot of sense. So again, I just think that this is just more than what they said it really is. So, all right, MacWorld started, I guess yesterday. You know,
Kinda.
it's funny. You and I are big Mac heads. We used to really anticipate MacWorld, and now it's like, wait, when did it start?
I know, it's kind of fizzled. Well, I mean, it's kind of been a downward slope, I think, since Apple left, and even more so in recent years. And this has almost been kind of a trend with all conventions, where they're just kind of all winding down. But Macworld in particular, like last year, I went and it was a lot of iPhone cases and iPhone apps, like iOS apps. So much so that this year, they're kind of even transitioning the name from Macworld to, of all things, iWorld.
Yeah.
And I hate how cliche that is. Oh, let's put an I in front of it.
You know, we were going to name this show iPodcast. No, we weren't.
No.
No. Kacey would have killed me if I suggested it.
I know. Let's just make it I cliche. How about that?
Wait, I'm sensing a meme.
Send your memes to.
Well, you can make it on the Google Meme Maker.
Yes.
But yeah, so nothing that I felt was even remotely interesting came out of Macworld at all. I looked through some of the websites and
it's a lot of like all the press releases are exactly as I thought. iPod and iPad cases and apps, iOS apps. Like a lot of cases and a lot of apps. Not like stimulating, I don't know, Mac accessories or software like that.
When I used to go to Macworld in New York and Boston years ago, Macworld, of course, they had things like the cases and all that. But it was more of a showcase of such like cool, innovative stuff.
Right, yeah.
And like, God, the days when like Bungie would show and I'm going back to those days. And in my time, we used to take the ferry to Macworld to Jacob Javits.
Yeah, right.
We used to have to drive to Boston.
Barefoot, uphill ways.
Uphill both ways, several hundred miles.
But no, it used to be like CES for all things Apple.
Right.
You know, like new stuff, prototypes.
And Apple used to be there.
And Apple, right. And it used to be the big keynote.
Yeah. And now that you've got CES, you got CES in the beginning of January. Now I've got Macworld at the end of January. Where do you present? Where's your market? Is it at CES or is it at Macworld? And I'm not sure if this is going to survive much. I don't know what the foot traffic there was though.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, if you're going there, but I think there's still like a distinction if you're going there for the expo or if you're going there for panels. Because the panels, I think, are still pretty rich in content and, you know, I mean,
yeah.
I think most of the stuff we're complaining about is kind of segregated to the expo show floor.
Right. But then you've got like E3 E3 is always huge. CES is always huge.
Even that's like winding down.
Huh?
Like they're not
E3?
getting the same traffic. Yeah, there's
You know why? Because of the booth babes. Because they don't allow the booth babes to do what they used to do years ago.
Oh, I didn't know that they.
No, in all seriousness, no, I didn't know that E3 was winding down. I haven't heard that.
Earlier this week, that was saying, yeah, like when they were talking about BlizzCon not doing their show this year, and that it's kind of, I mean, that shows are just not what they used to be in like the 90s and early 2000s, where that was it for anything in that genre. The convention was it, and now it's like, and I guess you could say, like the internet and social media and people being able to connect through like Google Hangouts and stuff is partially to blame, to where you don't need to make these large pilgrimages, once a year for whatever. You can just, be in a hangout or what have you with your favorite developers and stuff. So, I mean, I'm just kind of trying to guess why they would, because I love conventions.
I do too.
And I hate to see them kind of winding down and not being a thing anymore.
That's a shame. Well, we'll see. I mean, MacWorld is still going on for another, is it a day or two? I don't even know. I know I should know these things, but again, it's just...
It goes through Sunday.
It goes through Sunday, so we'll see if anything else comes of it. Apple to offer employees $500 off a new Mac and $250 off of iPads. This is interesting. I mean, Apple's got so much money. There's talk about whether or not they're going to be giving dividends to stockholders and such, and maybe this is some way of appeasing some people. But
yeah, it kind of seems that way.
$250 off an iPad, that's like half price, and $500.
It is.
$500
yeah, and
off
depending on the Mac you're buying, that $500 could be about half too.
Sure, if you buy a Mac Mini. I don't know why an employee would buy a Mac Mini, but
Mac Mini.
But I mean, if I would buy an iMac, but or a Mac Pro, that's a whole other issue, which we'll get into at some point. Is where the hell are the new Mac Pros?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, this article is really not much. Let's talk about the next thing that you have there about jailbreaking.
So yeah, the jailbreak community kind of. I think it was a couple weeks ago, caught up with iOS, with the most recent version of iOS 5.0.1 with an untethered jailbreak. And you're going to, I mean, the community usually comes out with a tethered jailbreak first, which means you can jailbreak your phone, but if for any reason you need to reboot it, it undoes the jailbreak and it restores it. So it doesn't survive through the reboot. An untethered jailbreak survives through the reboot. And that's kind of what you want. And it usually is like a day or so between the two. In any case, they came out finally with a untethered jailbreak for the newest version of iOS 5. I haven't had my iPhone jailbroken for I think a little over a year since I became a developer and got the beta release of iOS 5 last year. I restored my phone and have been running iOS 5 ever since, thinking like they've implemented, notifications and so many new things, and that's it. I don't need to jailbreak my phone anymore. I've kind of gotten to that point where I miss some of the stuff, like customizing your icons and tethering like over Wi-Fi for my laptop, little things like that, so that I can tether through AT&T, but I'd have to give up my unlimited data plan that I'm grandfathered into.
Nobody wants to get rid of that.
And nobody's going to do that, right. So I finally jailbroke my phone again last night. And then I saw this morning this news article about the jailbreak. I guess it's through the EFF or ECC. That their time is up and it's about to become illegal again.
Yeah, it was legal to jailbreak your phone for a couple of years, and now that is going to be rescinded. And I don't understand this limited time stuff.
I know. I would
It's
think
just like,
if
do it or
they
not.
right, and that's what I think a lot of people kind of thought. So in any case, I guess the petition is for a limited time, and its time is up in the first week of February. So TUAW and a lot of other blogs are kind of just, spamming this out and letting people know, hey, if you still want to do this, here's a petition that you can sign for the EFF to kind of rethink this and, I guess have it go another 2 years or what have you.
Yeah.
So I actually did sign the petition. You have to attach a text file with your name, position, what you do, and what you're for, jailbreaking iPhones or iPads, smartphones or tablets, and why. Some benefit. It doesn't have to be like your life story or anything. But so I did that, and hopefully, it'll all be well. But I don't think that is going to stop Apple from cracking down with every update to break jailbreaks either. So.
And not only that, but the EFF is looking to extend this to like consoles and not necessarily phones and iPads.
That was another part of that, in which I always thought they were in the clear, that it was mainly iPhones and iPads that were under fire because Apple. People have been modding their PlayStations and Xboxes for years.
Right. And yet, see, the thing is though, when you jailbreak something, when you hack something, you break the end user license agreement.
Yes.
It's not illegal in the sense that the cops are going to go to your house. But you break that EULA, so if you take it in for repair and they see that it's been jailbroken somehow, that's it.
Oh, yeah, no. The Genius Bar is not going to help you.
What's wrong with your phone?
Well, they kind of said...
So where are these pretty icons coming from?
A few years back that if they saw, and, Geek Squad would do this too, if they saw the LimeWire icon on your dock, they would just turn you away immediately.
No way.
Geek Squad does that too.
So even if you're using LimeWire for legitimate reasons, they'll just turn you away?
Well, they might not immediately, but they're either going to turn you away or they're going to immediately blame whatever your problem is on that. And to be fair, a lot of people that came in with viruses or weirdness, in a lot of cases it could be drawn back to LimeWire.
Sure,
But yeah, that was kind of like the scapegoat for anything, really.
All right, moving on to business. Let me just say this real quick. We don't have to talk about it for too long, but I mentioned before about where the hell are the Mac Pros? Where are the new Mac Pros? They haven't come out since November of 2000.
Oh, they're in my closet.
Are they really? You've got the new Ivy Bridge Mac Pros
stacked up. Oh,
where are the new Mac Pros? So you have a theory that the middle is getting fatter with Apple.
Yes.
Right? And the thing is I look at the Mac Pro for what I want to do. I don't want an iMac. I've got 4 hard drive bays. They're all filled. Yes, I do realize that you could put it in a Drobo or something like that, but I'm not the kind of person that wants to put stuff in a Drobo. I want the fastest access that I can have, and I don't want stuff transferring over FireWire or Thunderbolt or anything like that. I want 4 hard drive bays, and I want the ability to expand with the PCI slots and the two drive bays that I've got here, and I use all this stuff. Not to mention the ports that I've got, the digital in and out, which I don't think the iMacs have. But this is what I do, and this is what I need an iMac for. Not an iMac, a Mac Pro. My current Mac Pro is from 2006, and I didn't upgrade it immediately because when 2008 came around, I didn't really need a new Mac Pro then. But then 2009, 10, 11, now 12 is here, and where's my new Mac Pro? And so the theory was that it was supposed to come out last year. I forgot who it was, but someone who's well known and has been on the ball. I don't know if it was Kevin Rose, but somebody somebody had said that new Mac Pros were coming, and at the last minute, that changed. So,
Yeah,
do you think that Apple's getting rid of the high-end market?
It kind of feels that way. I mean, if you're looking at their software, for sure is a indicator of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at Final Cut.
Right.
Um,
I don't want to, but yeah.
where it, in the earlier days of Apple, they had the low end with they had two specific lines, like the Power Macs and the iMacs. The i series, iBook, iMac was for the average low end consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Power series, PowerBooks and Power Macs, were for the high end content producers in the industry. And so they've always kind of had that for a long, long time. But now within, I want to say like very recently, like just the last couple of years, right, that seems to be going away. And we seem to be focusing, like the two sides seem to be kind of like inching towards the middle, and they're just kind of focusing on the common denominator in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Where, they got rid of the white MacBook, and they got rid of Xserve. They're very close, it looks like, to getting rid of the Mac Pro. They might get one more iteration out just to have a Thunderbolt case, and then I wouldn't be surprised if that was the last one.
But then what do you do? Then what gap do you fill? What about these? Is it because that these chips are becoming so fast and the software has more or less kept up with it that you don't need 16-core Macs anymore? Or is it just that they're not selling because of the economy?
It might be partially that, but it might even be partially like in the early days of Apple, when they were first making, the original Apple I, the Apple II, and the Lisa, Steve Jobs was highly against people opening the case and modding it and adding in stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted a very closed system. He wanted complete control of the hardware, the software, everything. Mm-hmm. And in the first couple iterations, it was Woz that really had to talk him out of that from kind of a homebrew perspective, saying no, you have to put in extra RAM slots so people can add in more RAM if they want to. Mm-hmm. He didn't even want to do that. And I think it kind of harkens back to that, because if they get rid of the Mac Pro, which is really right now the only expandable Mac, you have all these closed systems, the iMac, the Mac Mini, the MacBook Pro, and the Air especially. So you kind of have what Steve Jobs' dream was. All these really closed systems that are really hard to open up. Mm-hmm. You need proprietary tools now.
Yeah.
And, you have an end-to-end solution. On one hand, it's great for the total novice, but on the other, on the power user end, it just makes it a huge pain.
Yeah. But it's not even, for me, I did say, yeah, I want the expendability, and I really do. But then there's the other part of it where it was just a powerhouse. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I haven't given, a podcast file from GarageBand to somebody with a newer iMac and say, tell me how long it takes to encode this into an MP3. And I would really like to know what those numbers are, because that's when I first started using this Mac Pro for podcasting back in 2006, I went from a G5 to this. And encoding on the G5 took forever. A lot of things took forever. Encoding video took forever. And then I went to a Mac Pro, and everything was great. I did some HD stuff years ago. And now things are starting to feel... And I got to say, it's a testament to the way these things are built. Because these things are built in such a way where here it is 6 years later, I'm still using the same computer. How many people can say that? So it's a testament to how these things are built. But now it's starting to feel a little slow. In fact, this broadcast that we're doing, I want to use Boinks TV, but I can't, because with everything going on this computer, Boinks just kills it. And I can't. And it's a shame, but that's just the way it is. And that's it was actually when I started using Boinks where I said, this machine really needs to be updated. And I looked in the store and I saw that it hadn't been updated since November of '08. I went, oh God, man. And that's the thing. It's like, do I really want it? Look, on this monitor, if I want to change my monitor, I can't. That bothers me a lot.
What monitor you have? Do you have a
right
30-inch?
Well, no. Right now I've got a Dell 27-inch, 1920 by 1200.
Oh, okay.
But if I wanted to throw a new monitor in here, and the reason why I'm using a Dell and not an Apple monitor is because of the card slots on the side, and I do a lot of digital photography. And so now I know a lot of people say, well, you could just buy an adapter. Yeah, but I don't want to buy an adapter. I've got the card slots right here. And so slap it into the side, and there you go. And these USB slots on the side are great. And I love this monitor. It's great. But what if I want to buy a bigger one? I don't have to buy a whole new computer. With an iMac, you do.
Well, that's another thing they seem to be getting rid of for possibly the same reason. It was that Apple 30-inch cinema display. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's gone now. It probably isn't going to be replaced. I think the replacement thus far is that 27-inch cinema display that has the same resolution as the 30-inch, but it's a little bit smaller, and it's got all the ports and the camera and speakers built in. It's pretty much an iMac without the computer, but it's kind of sad that I hate to see them like going away from the high end, but
it just seems to be the way it's going.
I know.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the record-breaking earnings call. This was just amazing. and as you wrote in our show notes, like a boss.
Apple dominates.
Oh my God! So they made like more money than oil companies.
Yeah, more money than a lot of people. There's actually, and I love this. There's a site called AppleMadeMoreMoneyThan.com, and it's a very simple. It just pretty much throws up what. In comparison, like what they made more money than. Apple made more money than the price of 92 million iPads. More money than the U.S. revenue of income tax of the Western United States. More money than nearly 2.5 times the 2010 budget of NASA.
And
come on.
And this is the same Apple that was floundering 10 or so years ago, and here they are on top of the world. All it took is somebody to say, this is what people want. And love or hate Steve Jobs, but who else has done this? Who else in the computer industry has done this where they can beat people like Exxon?
Oh, speaking of which,
did they finally do their earnings call?
Who?
Exxon.
No.
Or are you talking about Steve Jobs? Oh, okay.
One of them, my favorite one is Apple made more money than 2 Microsofts.
Which is ironic, isn't it?
I know.
Considering what happened years ago.
Yeah, I know. They had to take Microsoft's money to bail them out.
I was there. at MacWorld Boston when Steve presented.
When Big Brother was on the screen.
Big Brother. Wow, that was one hell of an audience reaction, let me tell you.
Oh, I could imagine.
All right, should Apple buy Nintendo? Where did you dig this up from?
Oh, it's been kind of all over recently. I guess Apple or Nintendo rather. I mean, I heard it being thrown around a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I have too.
And now it's come up once again because I think Nintendo's kind of having some trouble.
Well, it says right here in the article that you linked from the San Francisco Gate is that $838 million is how much Nintendo is expected to lose in the current fiscal year. Jeez. That's huge.
That's crazy.
And this is Nintendo. We love Nintendo.
I know.
And not to sound like a fanboy or anything, but a lot of this has to do with mobile gaming.
Yeah, iOS gaming has really kind of come up. And I think because Nintendo for like almost forever has really been seen as the kind of casual gamer platform.
Sure.
Where Xbox is like the hardcore first-person shooter type of platform, and then PS3 is kind of, it's hardcore but not as wide, and just kind of like in the middle there. It's got a wide range, but then Nintendo is like the silly family all-around kind of casual gamer platform. But now that iOS with the iPod Touch and iPhone and iPad is really kind of becoming a valid gaming platform.
Mm-hmm.
They're really cutting into Nintendo's market share.
Years ago, I was a huge Game Boy fan, but I was also a very big PSP fan. I love the PSP. It's a shame because the games on the PSP have actually become so good that I don't like playing them on the PSP anymore, which is funny because like the last Final Fantasy VII chapter, it was so good on the PSP that I didn't want to watch what I was watching on a tiny little screen. I actually tried to find a way of blowing everything up because
you could.
I just thought, well, I know you could.
We have cables.
Yeah, we have cables. But when the iPhone came out, everything, like, I can play Final Fantasy 3 and like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I think it's I have 1 and 2 on my iPhone.
Yeah, I've got 3. I think 4 is out for the iPhone. You don't even need a Nintendo device anymore to play these games. And it used to be that you could only play them on a PSP or a Nintendo, like a DS or something like that. And the 3DS, you know,
I get it.
I'm
like, there's no reason.
No, there's really no reason. I'm not a big fan of 3D.
Me neither. I hear it's a fad.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, there are some ways where it's done right, and I can go on and on about that. But as far as gaming goes, I really don't like 3D gaming at all. I looked at the 3DS and I just went, no, this is not compelling enough for me to drop all this money and buy all these new games. And on top of that, I've played Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time so many times in my life that I don't need to play it again in 3D on a tiny little inch and a half inch screen.
I think you do.
No, I don't. I would rather play it on my HD TV, or better yet, emulate it. I've emulated it on my Windows machine, and it's beautiful. Some people have made high-res textures. And my point is that the need, I'm rambling a little off topic, but the need for a dedicated gaming device is no longer there.
Yeah.
And so Nintendo's got to do something, or they're going to turn into Sega.
Yeah, they are. And I guess, like, even Steam would be cutting into that as well, because Steam kind of makes that argument for a dedicated platform even more moot. You know, it doesn't matter what operating system you're on, what platform, you know, you can get everything in one place. So
Nintendo's got to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. They have to, or else they're just going to lose too much money. There's only so much Zelda and Mario that's going to be able to go around.
I know. They're really banking on those two titles.
We love them.
We do. Yeah.
But what are you going to do?
I'm not going to buy a flip open console with a stylus.
Yeah. All right. The big controversy right now is Apple and working conditions in China. And I've been reading a lot. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I gotta say, one of my favorite tech journalists is Molly Wood, and she basically said probably one of the best thing that anybody has said that I've read, which is, if Apple really wants to fix this, they can. They have the power to do so, so why don't they do it? People are dying in China. Now, you could argue whether or not it's the fault of Foxconn, who makes all this stuff. And they don't just make Apple stuff either.
Right.
But Apple is their biggest supplier, or their biggest customer. Client, yeah. Just like blanked on the name there for a second. So, Apple can... Excuse me. The thing is, where is Apple going to go? Are there others? Because this is one thing that I haven't researched. I haven't researched this part of it yet. But are there other companies out there that can do what Foxconn is doing? Can Apple just say, look, either fix what you're doing over there, or we're going to go somewhere else?
Not for the same price.
Right.
You know, I think it's obviously Foxconn is doing it cheaper than anybody else, hence the draw. But they just opened a newer factory in, what is it, Texas, to kind of parlay some of that off, I think. And I think that was also part and partial to the flooding in Thailand, where a lot of hard drive and memory manufacturers were kind of put out of business for a while. And so instead of putting all their eggs in one basket, Apple's kind of trying to spread the load across, multiple areas. And so they've opened up this newer factory and I believe it's Texas. But anyways, I mean, most of their stuff is coming from Foxconn. And I mean, hey, Tim Cook just put out a letter today saying that they care. I mean, what else do you want them to do?
I don't know. I don't know what they can do, but I mean, I do know what they can do. They can force their hand is really what I think that Apple can do, is just put the screws on these people and say, you need to do something. Now, the problem, I've been reading this also, and I totally agree with this, is that part of the problem is us. Is that we're buying this stuff. Millions of people line up for these things every time there's a new device that comes out. So we're buying this stuff. Now,
well, that kind of helps Apple, have its heavy hand too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're part of the problem in that, like, if we weren't buying it, Apple would be, like, off the hook or anything. That kind of solidifies Apple's position as a heavy hitter. And if they chose to kind of swing their weight around and be like, you improve things or we're going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I can tell you firsthand, if they said that, at least my company would be like, they were for the last 2 or 3 months doing everything in their power to, jump to Apple's demands. They said, jump, and we were like, how high?
And that's what Foxconn is going to have to do. But it's going to take Apple to really push over there and say, this needs to stop. These crazy things about overtime and working 7 days a week and how people stand so long that their legs bloat. If this stuff is true, and I'm assuming that it is, my first thought is, well, if people are working so long, why not just get more people? And then have some people work shorter hours and swap more people. I'm sure there are people that are dying
there's a
for
lot
jobs.
of things they can do.
Yeah.
And like we said, I mean, Apple's not the sole proprietor of Foxconn, and yet they seem to be the highest profile client of Foxconn.
Yeah.
They make Samsung products too, but nobody's, holding Samsung's feet to the fire over this.
Yeah. All right. You have our last business report here, Apple and Enterprise. Tell us about this.
Okay, so I saw this article, and I, being an Apple user and promoter in the enterprise sector, thought it was fairly apt. I've been trying to promote this for a while, at least in my own environment. And it's so true. I'm like one person in a team, and I'm the only Mac user on that team.
I'm sure I'm the only
one. I'm the only one that really knows, generally how to use a Mac. Not like, they can use a Mac and they just don't know how to do kind of like terminal, functions or anything like that. Like, I'm really the only one that knows her way around the Mac operating system, and to a lesser extent the iOS operating system, and how, to kind of troubleshoot that and tricks on, if problems arise. So, and especially with the rise of iPhone and iPad has kind of been a huge player in gaining foothold. I mean, you can be a Mac house or a Windows house, but it seems like iPad and iPhone are the ones that are kind of agnostic. and no matter what you primarily run, Mac or Windows, generally everybody's for iPads and
Yeah.
iPhones in the workplace. Like, nobody has a problem with those, but they have a huge problem with Macs in the workplace.
Well, without giving too much away about who you work for and what you do, what do you do? You say you work in IT. Are you help desk? Are you a programmer? Like, what do you do at work? And I ask that because I just want people to get an idea of where you're coming from.
So I'm kind of part help desk, part sysadmin, running SharePoint servers and backup systems to a certain extent. And then, your basic help desk calls. We're a very small company, so a lot of us wear a lot of hats. But, yeah, so, I mean, we've, in the last year, possibly, I think it's primarily the last year, the number of iPhones in our environment has quadrupled. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're possibly at a 75% iPhone adoption rate.
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it's for multiple reasons. But, yeah, but, I mean, that being said, you would think there'd be a higher Mac adoption rate, and there really isn't. Like, it's still really frowned upon. And like I said, I'm the only one who kind of knows them and can support them, and so the majority of the people on my team don't and can't, and so they won't.
Right. One thing that I've found, I haven't worked directly in IT, but I have worked with people that are not necessarily anti-Mac. They're not biased against them, but I think they're more like, I'd hate to use this word, but they're more like Mac ignorant. And so what I've been finding over the years is that even in IT, even after all this time, people still think that Apple uses proprietary hard drives.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You still get that after all. Now remember, Apple never had proprietary hard drives. Back then, they did have SCSI drives, and this was back when IDE drives were very popular. And the SCSI drives were lower capacity and higher cost, but they were still standard SCSI drives. You could slap any SCSI drive into like a Mac 7600 or something like that. That said, I still find that people think that if you put a Mac on the network, it's going to bring the network down. People still think that. It's crazy. It's this old Mac bias from back in the days when 7600s and 8100s were around. And
there's people who think FireWire is proprietary to Apple.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I can understand why, because like Sony used to call it iLink. It's the same thing, but Sony called it something else. As a matter of fact, who was it? Somebody was calling Thunderbolt something different. Was it Sony?
It used to be Lightpeak.
Right. Well, that was the original name for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And now that it's out, I thought that there was a company that was making a laptop that was calling Thunderbolt something different.
Not to my knowledge. I haven't seen any other reports.
I'm going to have to look that up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The only other name I've seen it was Lightpeak before it kind of became a thing.
Okay. Well, what do you do? Like, how do you educate people at work?
Very slowly. I mean, if you come in, and really bully your way, I mean, I don't want to like force people, I mean, because that's obviously, a lot of them are just going to be turned away immediately. If you just come in and be like, you don't know anything, da-da-da, they're going to be, they're just going to be defensive. Right. I mean, they're going to be turned off immediately. So little by little, you kind of drop hints here and there, and I'm using a Mac in the environment now. So, as they kind of see me using my MacBook Pro and seeing that I can do everything they can do, and the network's not brought down, and hell isn't freezing over, they're kind of warming up to it. And I mean, I think that's really the best approach, to just kind of take it slow and be an example. And I mean, the best way to learn is through, I think, showing.
Yeah. Without having to bring down the whole network.
And not bringing down the network is always a plus.
Yeah, I know. All right. Let's move on to the lighter side of the show. We're going to do something with Apple culture. And you've got some interesting stuff here. Let's talk first about experimenting. You and I were talking about this on a variety of levels. Specifically, you and I were talking about overclocking. We're looking at chips for making a Hackintosh originally. And then the conversation sort of went into, well, did you ever overclock your Mac? And I went, no, because I never want to break it.
Right, exactly. It seems like Mac people are very protective of their machines. I think that goes hand in hand with how people use their Macs. It's like I find a lot of PC users, kind of see their computer as just, a thing. It's my computer. What? I use it. Whatever. It's there and it's just blah. But people who use a Mac, it's like, I love my computer. I love it. It's my baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my tool, and I use it for work, and I use it for all this stuff, but, I love it, and it's amazing, and I never want to, you're so much more protective of it than if it was just some plastic PC.
But
and so I think that goes hand in hand with, do you ever overclock, the CPU? No. Why? No.
Let somebody else do that.
My baby.
There are a couple of reasons for that. I do agree with what you're saying about, it's my baby and everything, because I feel that way also. However, on the flip side, if you try and do that on a PC, let's say you blow your CPU, right? Well, what happens? You just go down the street to Fry's or wherever, and you just buy another CPU, you pop it in, you're done. If you do that to a Mac, your motherboard can be blown. And then that gets hideously expensive. And so there's a cost issue with that, too. You blow your motherboard out, so what? On a Windows machine or a Linux machine, like a PC. So what? You go get another one. A couple $100.
Yeah, right. You have the choice of, a wide range of products that are going to fit that, puzzle piece. With Macs, it's a very slim, very narrow range of pieces that are going to fit, and most of the time you're going to have to go through Apple, and they're going to ask those questions. They're going to want to know what you're doing and da 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 da. But even still, if you get even if you get the replacement parts off of eBay or what have you, there's even fewer people that with the know-how or even the courage to replace and do that to their Mac.
I remember there was one Mac, I don't remember what it was, it might have been a G4, G5, and that's how far back this goes, where overclocking meant clipping a diode. And somebody did it, and apparently worked, but I don't know if I would want to trust that. If something that's not related to overclocking breaks your computer, and then you take it in to go, excuse me, sir, why is this diode taken off? What have you done here?
Yes.
You say, well, exactly. I got it like that.
Yeah. Joe Blow from Craigslist.
Yeah, really. So, I'm not really a fan of overclocking my Mac or doing any kind of weird experiments with it. The only thing that I ever do is, what I consider to be safe. And what I mean by that is, I'll pop in, let's say, an NVIDIA video card and see if it'll work out of the box. No, because sometimes, remember back in the day when there were G5 computers, you had to put a specific firmware on the video cards for them to work.
Yeah, no, you don't have to do that anymore, but you do have to wait. What is it? An extra few months for the Apple version of the GPU to come out.
Right. Yeah, because you don't have the Indian problem anymore. Big Indian, little Indian. Everything should be the same. But I got to do some more reading on this, but I still don't understand why you need a Mac version of a card now. Because the card should be the card. And it should read and write the data the same way. It's still a PCI slot.
Right. I think it's just dependent on the Apple updates and the operating system. You can throw... in a Mac Pro, you can throw in the latest GPU and run it under Boot Camp with Windows, and it'll
Right.
run just fine. It'll recognize it, and it'll run as it should. But it will not recognize it under Mac OS.
Yeah. So that I don't quite understand why different firmware has to be written to the card. I'm sure if anybody's listening that has a reason, I'll look it up myself. But like you said, if you can run it under Windows, and since this goes back to a discussion that you and I were having about EverQuest, where the Mac version of EverQuest wouldn't work, like you couldn't run the Mac client with Windows based servers. You had to run you had to run on the Mac server.
When they finally
and we're
came
looking
out
at
with
it
the
going,
Mac version.
Why? What? Like why? It's just data.
I
It's
think
just
it was
bits.
just laziness on their part. Like they just wanted to keep the two separate instead of making, a universal client or server.
All right. Moving on to another part of the culture segment. I wrote this out because the iPads are huge. People love them. You love yours. I love mine. But what do you use yours for? Specifically, what you hug your iPad, but what do you do with it that's so awesome?
Primarily, I don't know if I do anything terribly awesome. I primarily use it as a second screen.
Really? How so? With what software?
Well, not like an extended desktop
Okay.
screen, but I'll have that running Netflix or a video podcast over on
I
the
see.
side, so then I have more screen real estate to do my work. So that's like the main function of it. A lot of like games and stuff I prefer to to use on my iPhone, oddly enough. But some games, I like better on the bigger screen.
What I do with mine is I've got an entire reader folder, and so I've got my comics reader, I've got my Kindle, iBook, that sort of thing. I've got magazines. I tell you, for years I was completely against using a digital device for books, and I still, in a sense, am. But I read my first novel on the iPad, and my eyes didn't feel strained, and I didn't have that problem. I read, excuse me, I read magazines on the iPad, and I really like having magazines because there are some magazines that I keep, like art magazines and such. Like I read one called Imagine FX, and it's nice to have the digital copy because when you collect them for 2 or 3 years, either as a reference or something else, they take up so much space in your house.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been using it for that. I really wish that there was a way to take books. I have a lot of art books in the house. I would love to take some of these books, where I don't need to have the physical book in front of me. I would love to have digital versions of those. And those haven't come out yet. Gaming, I don't play a lot of games directly on the iPad. However, I do have an iCade. And I love the thing. I absolutely love it.
Oh my gosh.
I
keep looking at those and I'm like, I don't know. Because I think it would just sit on my desk as kind of like a conversation piece, and I wouldn't use it that much.
It does. There are times when I don't use it for several weeks at a time. So yeah, but what else do I do? I have a lot of astronomy apps. And
yeah, those are really good.
The astronomy apps are very nice. And the one thing that I use, I don't have it hooked up today for this, but I have an app. And as a matter of fact, I'll just we'll go into apps right now because that's the next part of our show, because I'm going to talk about SoundSlate. I use this app. I didn't use it today. Because I don't have enough real estate on my desk right now. I'm actually doing this ad hoc, as a matter of fact. But I use it for it's a soundboard app, and essentially you can hook it up to iTunes and you can drag and drop. It's that document drag and drop that iTunes does for specific apps. And you can add sounds to it, or it'll pull it from iTunes, your iTunes library, and so you can set up these pages with different buttons in them, and then you can play sound effects. And I'm going to start using this for doing the podcast. I hook it up to the mixer. It's got its own dedicated channel. And yeah, I really love using it because
that I think would be a really nice functionality.
I have a lot of stuff going on my screen right now, and I have this soundboard app for the Mac, but I just can't use it because I would be like, well, wait, okay, I got to move this out of the way, and I've got 2 monitors, and I still can't use it. It's just it's too much.
Yes, indeed.
Well, do you have an app for the show?
Not per se. I can go over. I found this one today that I thought was really nice. I was looking for a terminal app. Since the first thing I do, and really anybody should do when they jailbreak their devices, is change your root and mobile passwords.
Oh, right.
On the device. Because, I mean, the minute you jailbreak it, you're open. You're as open as Android. And anybody who knows the default password, which, I mean, it's like having your router, like you just took it out of the box, plugged it in, and went off, with all the defaults set on it. Anybody who knows anything about routers knows the default IP address, the default username and password. Then they can get in and, if not, totally get into your computer, just mess with your network. Same with the iPhone. So the first thing I do is change the passwords. So you need a terminal type SSH. You need to SSH into your iPhone from your computer, or just get a terminal application on there so you can get a command line. So the one I usually use that's on the Cydia store called Mobile Terminal seems to be broken with the latest jailbreak.
Oops.
So then I was looking on the Apple App Store, and there's ISSH I've used, and it's pretty nice. It's $10. But then I found this new one called Prompt. It's $7.99, a little bit cheaper. But it caught my eye because it's prettier. And I will pay more if need be for aesthetics. Good design will just always get me.
Over function? Over function?
It depends on the function. Like if I'm looking at 2 apps and they have the same function, like ISSH and Prompt, they do the same thing. The one's prettier. I'm going to go with the better designed one. If one has significantly better functions and just a crappy GUI, then I might go with the function. It depends. Anyways, but so what Prompt does is it literally gives you a command line. You can SSH or connect to whatever servers. If you know the server name or IP address, the username and password, then you can connect to whatever. And then it gives you a command line prompt, and then you can do what you need to do. And it'll save all of your server addresses and connections in this connection list, kind of like a FTP client, like CyberDuck or something like that.
Right.
So that's pretty nice.
Okay. So our last segment, we call it Trips, which is really just tips and tricks. And I don't know how this happened, but I think I accidentally spoke when we were writing down the notes, and I accidentally said Trips. Talk about jailbreaking iOS 5, because I've never jailbroken a phone. I've always wanted to try it, but then because I'm so dependent on my phone that I didn't want to take the chance, I didn't feel that the risk was more than the necessity of using a non-jailbroken phone. So talk about a little bit about what you did, how you did it, and what you're getting out of it.
Okay, so the latest one for iOS 5, and the one that I used, is called Absinthe. It's the latest in the long line of Poison jailbreaks. Like earlier there was like red poison, green poison, and now there's Absinthe. And you download this application. If you just Google Absinthe jailbreak, and you'll probably find it. You download this application. You plug in your iPad or iPhone or iPod Touch. It recognizes it, and you hit a button that says jailbreak. It literally does everything itself. It goes through, it loads some software on your device, it reboots, loads some more on there, and then you disconnect. It'll tell you to disconnect. And then you disconnect it, and then there's this Absinthe app on your homepage. So you tap that and get like the second part going, and load some more stuff, reboots, and then you have the Cydia app store on your homepage, and the Absinthe app disappears. So then you log into Cydia. Launch that app. It loads some more stuff, but it's fairly quick. And off you go. I mean, it's pretty. The Cydia homepage in the App Store is pretty helpful. They have a how-to on changing your password, what apps to download, and everything. Like I just mentioned, how to do that. How to tether if you wanted to do the Wi-Fi tethering for your laptop, like I mentioned. You can search, and what's really nice is, they have like a basic search database, kind of like the Apple App Store. You can just search for anything from full-blown apps to little like UI customizations and tweaks to sound effects and ringtones. Anything. New docks, new lock screens, anything you want to download and customize, you can.
So what have you done? Oh, I'm sorry.
But I was just going to say, there's also a part where you can customize the repositories that it searches through. So it starts you with a few of like the basic Cydia ones. And then you can also customize that and add in like people, if you Google, a certain app that you're looking for and you're not finding it, people will list their URL for their specific repository, and you can add that in, and it'll search those databases as well.
Okay.
So it's kind of nice in that way. I haven't done a whole lot just now since I've only done it last night. In the past, usually the first thing I will do, aside from changing my password, is start designing new icons and user interface elements. I'm really big into that. I'll design, everything from like the default Apple icons to like the folders and how they look to like the menu bar icons and all of thatness.
That's nice.
Yeah, I like it.
That's really nice. And what do you like? Make it out of wood or steel or whatever you want? You can just do whatever you want. You can go nuts.
Yeah, no, the last time I was into this, I kind of did it with like this like acrylic plastic looking interface. Just kind of like the early 2000s Apple aesthetic.
I would love to make a custom home screen that put more information, like for example maybe live weather or something like that. Things that I would generally unlock the phone for, that are common, that are not necessarily going to break the security of the phone. Oh, that would be on the lock
screen?
Yeah, and put them on the lock screen. That's what I would like.
Oh God, I'll have to dig up the screenshot, because the last time I had it jailbroken, I think last summer, I had one that was like a totally custom lock screen that showed the weather with little pictures like, sunny or cloudy or what have you. Showed where I was, like the city or location and all of that. And it wasn't, instead of like straight across, and scaling down, it was like at a 45-degree slant, and it was all stylized.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I'll Google stuff like that.
No, there's tons of stuff like that you can do.
Okay. All right, I think, are we done?
Sure.
Sure?
Honestly, between the two of us, we could probably go all night. But...
Oh, we can, but the show's only going to be about an hour, so... But there is one more thing. That's what you have written here.
And I didn't enter in anything for that.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So if you like the show, we would appreciate a positive review on iTunes once I get this show up. Yeah. Well, the first show is always the hardest one to get up there because, it takes a couple days to get approved and all that. But, yeah, we really appreciant a positive review on iTunes.
If you tweet us, we'll be your best friends.
Yeah, we will. And it won't even cost you anything.
That's a fair trade, right?
I think it is. All right. How does everybody get a hold of us?
Well, my Twitter handle is at Kacey Queso.
Then my Twitter handle is at StarMike. You can email us at theinfiniteloopshow@gmail.com. And the Twitter ID for the show is Infinite Loop
TV.
Infinite Loop TV. And the website for the show is theinfiniteloopshow.com. That's it. Oh, one thing that I want to mention is that we're doing this show. Excuse me. We're doing the show on a Friday night. I think we decided that we're generally going to start doing the show on Wednesdays, because it's easier to get a show out on a Wednesday when news generally happens during the week, the early part of the week. So by the time Thursday or Friday rolls around, it's already too late. So yeah, we're going to do it on Wednesday nights. Yep.
Nobody wants old news.
No, old news is bad news. It's not good for podcasting. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate it. And we'll talk to you next time.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.